phone had been infected with Pegasus. Thank you to the Amnesty International team for conducting the forensics. We've learned that they've been following me, tracking me. I mean, I had a meeting with the Belgian foreign minister that was entirely listened into, and we can see that on the forensics report. From the moment I walked into the room to the moment I walked out, the software was active in my phone. And so this is not only spying on me, it's spying on the Belgian government, it's spying on the other government officials who I'm interacting with, to plead to them to help us save my father and to put pressure on the Rwandan government. And frankly, at first I thought it was, I know the methods of this government, I know how they silence critics, I know how they intimidate people, so I had thought I knew that this was a possibility, but as time passed on and I realized the capabilities of this software, I was frightened and really shaken to my core to realize the level of invasion and of my life, but also as I try to show the world how my father's human rights are being violated today, they're violating mine as well.
Karine, for you, do you think that the government was able to use the information they would obtain on your device against your father during the time you were constantly surveilled? And how did it change your activism? Now that you're aware of the technology and now that you're aware that it happened to you and that the government has this kind of access?
Yes, so we noticed with our Rwandan lawyers who sometimes go to visit my father in the prison that some of the messages that we were exchanging among our teams, they were being asked for those same documents, same information to try to stop them from doing their jobs as lawyers. I would say that my father, he was tortured and kidnapped and is now being silenced because he stood up for human rights and because he stood up for democracy. Now, we found out that I have Pegasus in my phone, so my question, and I am advocating for my father, I am standing up for human rights, and does this mean this is what will happen to me? Will I end up kidnapped and tortured and sitting in the Rwandan jail? So we know that and my whole team, our family is being targeted one way or another by this government. And Rwanda is known to be a country that practices transnational repression. The Freedom House just published a very detailed report on the activities of the Rwandan government on outside of Rwandan soil and trying to silence critics and journalists and whomever speaks out. And so I would challenge people to go further than just the companies that are creating these softwares and go after the country. I mean, hold accountable the governments that we know are doing this. I mean, I am the living example of what happens to, our family and my father, we are the examples of what actually happens to the humans behind it. My father is being silenced. His voice has been silenced because he spoke out, and the dictatorial regime was using the spyware, and we know who it is. So I would want everyone to call on your governments to not only hold the companies responsible, but the governments using this software to silence people accountable as well.
That's a very powerful message. Karine, I wanted to ask you about a solidarity among activists, and in general, how the voices of activists can impact the future of this kind of technology and basically its use. Mm-hmm. What can be done to hold authorities accountable and these companies accountable?
Well, so first we have to continue to shed light on it. The research that the journalists and the experts are doing is already bringing it out, and we're talking about it. And a couple years ago, I personally didn't know much about Pegasus. And actually, just a couple weeks ago, I was at a conference in Oslo, at the Oslo Freedom Forum, and we discovered that my new phone also has traces of the Pegasus spyware, which means that even after the reveal last year, there has not been any accountability. Nothing has actually happened, and we know that the government officials have the tools in their boxes to hold these governments accountable. So as activists, we have to continue to stick together. We have to continue to report this. We have to continue to talk to journalists so that they are also reporting on it, so that they also are taking the proper measures to remain safe. But on the personal level, with my goal and our goal to get my father out of prison, again, my father was kidnapped after having been surveilled for many years, after having harassed and intimidated by the Rwandan government. So one way to show that this is not okay is to put all the government pressure possible on the Rwandan dictator in order for him to release my father and for him to return home, and so that these authoritarian regimes know that this is not okay, that we will not stand in silence and will not let it happen.
So you just discovered you've been compromised again. There is a great question from the audience. What, if anything, are you doing to avoid being compromised again? Or you just assume it's inevitable?
At this point, I don't know. I think there's little I can do because I cannot know whether my phone is infected. Even if I get a new one, they'll find another way. So one method we've been using in my family, since everyone is frightened, we put all our phones in the microwave, which is, I don't know that it works, but at least it makes some people feel safe. But unfortunately, there's no way until there's more work done by our governments on this, then there's no way to feel safe.